In this video, I'm going to give you the only life advice that you need if you're kind of feeling stuck with where you're at and you're thinking and dreaming about the future. In this video, I'm going to go over 3 themes across my life where I've seen that delayed gratification, putting in the work and effort in the present, directly pays off in the future, and how if you use that to your advantage, you can kind of achieve anything that you want to achieve as long as you're willing to put in the effort consistently and relentlessly over time. So let's talk about this a little bit. So I've had a lot of stuff go on in my life. I used to be a pro Pokemon TCG player. I dropped out of college. I then re-enrolled in college. I've worked since I was 16 across McDonald's and other companies. And my main takeaway over this time period from talking to people who are way smarter than I am, people that have given me advice and mentorship, is that the effort that you put in today has a direct correlation with the you of the future. And I've seen this over time consistently throughout my life in various aspects of things that I do. And it takes time and reflection to actually see this in action and understand what it actually means. Because it's really hard to kind of hear that sentence or hear that information, digest it, and then do something with it immediately, because it's hard. As humans, we want instant gratification. Things around us are, designed to give us quick dopamine hits and give everything that we want to us instantaneously. And so this advice is a little bit hard to hear because it means that you have to put the effort into things over time consistently and be willing to wait for it. So let's talk about this a little bit more and what does it actually mean. So I'll give you 4 main areas where this has really paid off in my life, and where at the time when I started these things, I didn't realize it was going to result in what it resulted into. So the first pillar that we're going to talk about is going to be career. So when I was in high school, I was a pro Pokemon TCG player, and my pretty much entire identity was around the fact that I could travel the world playing the Pokemon trading card game, competing in tournaments, and I was the best in the world. Now, that's an example of something where I put a ton of effort into it and I got really good over time in a short period of time, but I'm going to save that for another time, where instead I want to kind of focus on the skill sets that I learned from being a Pokemon trading card game player, which is that you have to put time and effort into your craft. You have to continuously play the game. You have to get better and better and better at the game over time if you actually really want to be the best, kind of translated into my career. And so I basically networked my way into an internship opportunity where I was given the opportunity to move to Seattle and work in corporate finance. And I had no idea what I was doing in corporate finance when this opportunity was offered to me. The only things that I knew how to do were work really hard, and I was pretty good with people. And so I wanted to go out there and demonstrate that I was willing to work really hard to stay on the team and get a return offer and all of that information. And so kind of throughout that summer, the first kind of couple weeks of being on the job at that internship, not only was I in school full time, kind of doing stuff outside of work, but I also would come in before everyone else on my team earlier. I would also stay later than everyone else on my team. And I did that consistently throughout the entire summer, and continued to have that type of work ethic as I moved through different roles, met different people, and kind of built a reputation that I was someone that could be relied on and dependable when crunch time happened. And so I always kind of thought that work ethic supersedes pedigree and credentials, or kind of the saying that talent or hard work beats talent over time. And so I've seen this play out many times, where in this kind of counterfactual world, when I was an intern, the other intern that was in my area was working on 3 degrees at the same time, was by all means a perfect student, had everything going for them, but they would show up late, they wouldn't show up to meetings, they would, not do their check-ins, they wouldn't ask for extra work, anything like this. And by the end of the summer, when that person thought that they were going to get a return internship, unfortunately, they were disappointed. And the person that put in all of the effort was there attentively, made sacrifices on personal life or other things that I was interested in, such as like going to the Pokemon World Championships. I was the one that ended up getting the return offer. And so just as a 2 comparison, work ethic in this instance completely beat out the talent side on the other one. And so that's kind of the story of setup. But I took those themes of working hard and like building relationships and trust with the people that I was working with, being dependable, and kind of extrapolated that throughout my career to all of the teams that I've worked on, all of the people that I've interacted with, being genuine with the people that you work with. And that results in promotions, it results in opportunities, it results in all sorts of these things where at the time when I first got on that flight going to Seattle and kind of had this mission of basically how can I outwork most of the people that I work with and how can I really like make a difference. It was putting in long hours. It was putting in, time to study and understand things in a way that a traditional like 9 to 5 schedule just wouldn't support, and being almost overly obsessive about the fact that I had this really unique opportunity and that I wanted to kind of make a name for myself in the space of corporate finance that has led to some of the things that I now have today, which are like being one of the youngest senior finance analysts at the company that I work for. I was just offered the opportunity to move international and take a role in London for work and all sorts of stuff like this. And an incredible network of people across the company internally, but also externally that I have met through opportunities like this. And so that is one example that has absolutely paid off. And people around me and mentors that I have continuously point out the fact that the effort that you put in today has direct correlation and impact on your future self. And so even when I kind of have moments of second guessing myself in the present about, am I putting in too much effort? Is this worth it? Am I getting paid enough, etc.? I always think about the opportunity that I have in front of me, how much I can learn from it, and then what that could result in the future. And that delayed gratification is kind of the thing that keeps me going and putting in that amount of effort. The second example that I'll kind of highlight and talk about in my life is my experience running a Pokemon business, which, for 4 years of my life, I dedicated a ton of time to buying used Pokemon cards on eBay, going to garage sales, networking with people that I knew from my time during the competitive Pokemon trading card game world, and all of this stuff. I would manually like hand pack envelopes. I would sort through cards for hours. All this time, years of my life dedicated to kind of just buying items and reselling them online across various platforms, making YouTube videos about that content, all of that stuff. And at the time, if you were to do the math on how much money I was making doing that, I was probably making less than minimum wage, to be completely honest. Like, just thinking about how much effort and time I put into that business versus the returns I would get from, all of that effort across every single thing, the amount of time that I was spending on it, being, researching and buying products and all of this stuff, I was probably making almost nothing doing that. And, at the time, I didn't really know what else to do. It was COVID. The opportunity of playing professional Pokemon was kind of taken from me when all the events were shut down. And so I pivoted into taking all the knowledge that I'd saved up from being in that space and applying it to business, which was something that I had kind of fallen in love with throughout that time. And so for me, it was the pursuit of like always trying to get better, trying to find new ways to run the business, trying to get better margins by, selling on different platforms or seeing if I could investigate international opportunities or networking or all sorts of stuff like that. And it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of skills about business. It taught me a lot of skills about, how do you look at a profit and loss statement? How do you do certain things as it relates to running a business and working with people and working with suppliers? I learned a ton. But at the end of it, I kind of left it a little unfulfilled in that it didn't result in like some sexy, like, $1 million payout or something that you see online where like some 16-year-old creates an app in a couple of days and then makes it big. And that was kind of a hard pill to swallow, right? I spent a ton of time doing this thing, and but the thing that I always kind of knew in the back of my mind is that over time, the sealed Pokemon product appreciates in value. And so if I ran my business in a way that I could take the money I was making, reinvest it back into the business, and keep growing the amount of sealed product that I held onto and viewed it more as like an investment versus a cash flowing business, that it might pay off in the future. And those hours of effort that at the time were probably making minimum wage or something would translate into something more material in the future. And so, today, I started that business, or in back in the time, I started that business with $500. And one of my regrets is not kind of betting more on myself and using more of my personal income from jobs or investments or other stuff to kind of fuel the fire and go a little bit, harder on that business. But sitting here today, you've probably seen news articles from the Wall Street Journal or something about how Pokemon cards are like one of the hottest investments in years. And I don't know what the exact numbers are, but a 30-year time period, it's like that and art are like the two hottest investments that would have outpaced like the S&P 500. And so year to date this year, the sealed product portfolio of Pokemon cards that I have is up $50,000, which now brings the total nest egg of Pokemon product to about $100,000 in Pokemon stuff. And so I always kind of knew that sealed product would appreciate, but I didn't know it would appreciate like this. And so every time I kind of refresh the screen of like what is it that my investments in Pokemon cards are at, I am stunned and amazed at how me having that much money tied up in Pokemon cards is a directly correlated with the years of effort that I put into studying, researching, grinding, flipping, like being involved in that space and then having that pay off. It would be similar to if you had discovered Bitcoin in 2008 when people were telling you that, you know, or 2008, 2009, that you're an idiot for like believing in internet money and then now seeing your Bitcoins be $120,000. It would be similar to that. There were plenty of people that told me I was wasting my time or that what I was doing was nonsensical. And so I feel very much, proud of the fact that I didn't kind of sell all of that stuff. I stayed true to the mission and I took away valuable learnings from it. I don't do that stuff anymore, which maybe I should. But that's another example in my life where I put in a ton of effort into something over time and was patient, and it ended up paying off in the future. Now, the third one that I'll go into is kind of similar in that it's about investing in stocks and retirement accounts. And so when I was 18, I got super into personal finance, and I would read all sorts of information about personal finance that was like, if you just start early, if you just start young, you will thank yourself later. And when you first open that first investment account, whether that's a Roth IRA or a 401k or something, and you put your first $500 in there, you're making the active choice to not spend $500 on something fun and instead invest it in your future. You look at that $500 and you go, well, that's not $1,000,000. This sucks. And I have to do this every month and I have to do it forever. Like, this seems pointless. It's never going to amount to anything. And so, I stayed true to it. I decided, as kind of a life mission or life goal, I'm going to, at a bare minimum, invest $500 a month into the stock market over time throughout my life so that by the time I retire, I, have enough money that's comfortable and I can feel good about it. And so, as time went on, the market fluctuates up and down. There were months where I would make a ton of money. There were months where I would lose a ton of money. And I'm mostly just talking about buying like index funds, nothing super crazy, doing this thing. In fact, I had two investment accounts. One was retirement accounts in the S&P 500, and then there was the other side, which was like I thought I was smarter than everyone else and opened individual brokerage account and picked stocks. And I did way worse on that one than I did on just buying index funds, which is a different topic for a different video. But through doing that, and now that it's been 5 years of putting $500 into a Roth IRA over time, that $500 a month over 5 years has now amounted into $50,000 in a retirement account. And so today it feels great to have $50,000 in a retirement account, Roth IRA, that I can say, wow, I was really dedicated about this. The S&P 500 has done well and resulted in appreciation that I could not have predicted. But it kind of takes it's also very hard now with $50,000 to conceptualize that becoming 100,000 or a million someday. But at the time, starting with 500, it was hard to conceptualize 50,000. And so this is another example of how like picking something, sticking to it, and being disciplined with it in the present resulted in something in the future that is way, way, way more impressive than it was at that first step on that first $500, that first commitment to discipline at the time. And so now, same thing, nothing's going to change. I'm going to keep doing $500 a month. In fact, it's much more because I'm very into this type of stuff. And so I do more, but more that single investment account 5 years ago. I could not have told my 18-year-old self at the time that this was going to work because I just didn't know. I didn't realize it. And the stuff that I was reading in the books, it was hard to conceptualize at the time because when you only have $500 and you're working at McDonald's, it's hard to see what the future looks like in a world where that's not the case anymore. And so investing is another one where if you're disciplined about it and you stay the course and you are, you're making smart actions over time, that will pay off in the future. Now, the last one that I want to talk about is one that I've learned a lot from over time. And, I actually wish that one of my biggest regrets, if I were to go back and tell myself something from, being here in the future that I should have prioritized way sooner, was health and fitness. And so, a couple days ago or a week ago, I weighed in and I'm now 190 pounds with a bunch more muscle. I'm in arguably in probably the best shape I've ever been in my life now that I'm 23. And all throughout high school, all throughout middle school, elementary school, all that stuff, I was the overweight, fat kid, funny kid. Like, that was my character. I was 400 pounds when I was reaching the later half of high school. COVID was not particularly friendly to me. I was a manager at McDonald's. Like, and I think I had allowed the problem to go too far to where I just didn't really see the point in trying to fix it. And so I wish, now knowing what I know now about how I feel about exercise and discipline and all of this stuff, I wish I could have gone back and told my 16-year-old self or 18-year-old self or whatever, like, you need to focus on this right now, because the work that you put in now will fix this problem sooner, as long as you stay dedicated to it and kind of be consistent with it. And so, this kind of health journey for me has been a 3-year process, and it's continuing to go. I'm not kind of satisfied yet with where I'm at, and so I know that if I stay the course, keep staying dedicated and focused on the things in the present day, that over time it will kind of play out. I just have to be patient, and kind of realize it over time. But a lot of my health journey began at the same time that I started that internship in Seattle, where it would have been 2022. I read the book Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins on a flight to Seattle, and that really showed me that a lot of this stuff is all mental. Like, if you put the effort into it, like, you as a human can achieve kind of anything that you want. And so from that point on, I just got super super disciplined about making sure that I was eating less calories than I burn on a daily basis, making sure I was going to the gym, being active. And that initial time that I did it, I kind of did it incorrectly. I was not eating enough calories. I was, basically starving myself, and that resulted in me losing a lot of weight, but it was unsustainable and unhealthy. And so I kind of rebounded and gained more weight back and all of this stuff. But now in my current phase, like, I've realized the importance of protein and how that makes you feel throughout the day, and that, like, I'm not gonna be starving by the end of the day if I kind of pace out my meals and make sure that I'm actually eating, the right balance of stuff. Or if I go to the gym every day at 5 a.m., if I start running and start doing all of these things and get into a routine and just stick to routine, over time this starts to play out, and, like, the body just changes in a way that you can't conceptualize in a day or in a month. You have to see the results over multiple months or years. And so right now, in the current time and space, I feel so good on a daily basis. My energy levels are always high. I'm always excited for new opportunities. I carry myself more confidently. I'm, excited about stuff on a day-to-day basis, where my previous self, when I was overweight, I was so bitter about everything. I, like, always felt terrible. I would sleep in. I didn't have, kind of a joy or luster for life. I just, I had a really hard time in school, as I was bullied often, didn't really get anywhere with girls or anything. And so I think for a long time, I kind of deprioritized that part of my life and allowed it to kind of consume me. And so making that switch and that commitment to, like, all right, I understand that, today I might be 400 pounds, and I'm not gonna, it's, really hard for me to conceptualize what I would look like at 200 pounds or something. But if I take these steps consistently over time, I will eventually get there. And like I said, if you're overweight, like, this is not an easy thing to conceptualize or see. And it's taken me 3 years to get to a place where I'm, like, excited about, going to the gym and help and all this stuff. Like, it was not a short process, but by taking steps actively to, like, go to the gym, make sure I'm eating the right things, saying no to things, sacrificing, and over time kind of realizing this delayed gratification, I'm now in a place where I wish I had done this so much sooner, and, like, really prioritized this earlier in my life. And so, as kind of a conclusion, those are four key areas where I've seen direct payoff of what happens when you put effort, attention into the present day and how that pays off in the future. And that's across my career, that's across businesses that I've run, that's across personal finance, and that's across weight. And those things all together have basically cemented in my mind that on a day-to-day basis, I always need to be pursuing things that are going to make my future self happy. Because in reality, we can't do anything to fix the past. I can regret all I want, but the past Will is gone. I can't talk to him anymore. You know, he's lived his experiences, and those experiences can only be used to fuel the present self to make changes in the future. So if you like this video, go ahead and stick around for more. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you all in the next video. See you guys.